Well, hello, welcome to this episode. We're going to talk about what kind of tools you might need if you're going to do, say, a backsplash like this using ceramic tiles. So roll tide, don't roll. Now we got that done. I got to warn you ahead of time, this may be a little bit longer one. And it's going to be very simplistic for people that have never done this, maybe for the do-it-yourself homeowner type folks who are just trying to get something done, save a little money. They have a little bit more time and they need a project due around the house to put that sweat equity into the value of their home. Well, that's what this particular show will be dealing with. So we're going to reset the camera and we're going to look at the tools we have in front of us. Some of the stuff you might need, I've kind of separated it off into the setting or putting the tile on and the grouting and cleaning up over here. And it's going to be fairly obvious. There's nothing exotic in any of this stuff. And a lot of homes will have at least some of this stuff in their general vicinity already. So let's step up and look first at the tile side. Well, you're obviously going to have to pick your tile. I like the ceramic tile because it allows me to use simple tools to cut with. I like the Subway tiles because they're just timeless. It doesn't have the wow factor that some of the other designs would have as you go up, but they're fairly inexpensive. And if you break one or it doesn't turn out right, it's not a big deal. Throw it away, get you another one. These are 15 to 18 cents a piece, 3x6. They are non-vitreous, so they're a wall tile, kitchen tile type thing. Very economical. You compare that to some of the other type, like the mosaics, can go $15, $20 a square foot. And that's fine if you want to use a few of those in there, but it can really throw the cost of a simple thing like this. And if you have this or a painted wall or maybe wallpaper, what would look better to you? I think the tiles do. So I'm not going to defend that. It's just my choice. They have all other kinds of versions of this. We have like the 4x12s, which work out real well with the type of spacers. And they're easy to plan, easy to cut, easy to work with, not that expensive. So let's start with the difference between grouting, which is for floors. I don't know if it'll show up well on my shirt, but you'll see we have big notches here, 1/4-inch notches. That's because this is for doing grout on a floor. And the height of these little notches, we need the groove because that's what allows the grout to squish out as you level the tile down if you were doing a floor tile. The same thing happens if you do it on a wall. We just do it on a little smaller scale with the adhesive versus the grout. But the grout is weight bearing, so it needs a little bit more room. And here we have one for glue. Now this one you may not be able to tell. If I get my lovely blue shirt in there, you might. It's got 1/8-inch notches in it. Now you might also use some that are the sawtooth, or what I call shark tooth. It's just, you know, the triangles. And they work too. And there's one not here because I've already thrown it away. It's a disposable. They cost about $1, $2 a piece. It's a little credit card size, little white plastic's what I'm seeing in the stores here last month or so. And you use those a lot of time for doing some single tiles, back buttering, that kind of thing. So grout is usually used for floors, and weight bearing, it's a different type of compound versus the glue. Now here's the glue we use, which is Mapei's Type 1. It cleans up well with water. From time to time you may have to soak your trowel, and you can see it gets a little bit rusty as we scrape on it, but it'll clean up. It cleans up pretty easily with water. It dries kind of as a hard setting glue, so you can scrape it off. And when we get over to the scrapers, that's why we have some plastic and one metal. So we use this Type 1. It's not suitable for outside. This tile, we've already covered in the previous video, is not suitable for an outdoor kitchen or pool areas like that because it is hygroscopic and it will take up water, which may lead to staining, but it also, in the wintertime, if it soaks up water, can lead to cracking and breaking of this stuff. I used some old trim I had left over from doing the remodel, and I used it for a ledger. There'll be a long, but I think useful video on the ledger process. Of course, some blue tape. I like to tape out against my wall or cabinet where I'm not going to get it messy. You don't see the black plastic that I use for a drop cloth, but we also use the tape for that. There's a quick tip. I've already shot a video. It's already released. It's out there. Flashlight will help sometimes because, believe it or not, under cabinets and up in high in places, that's the wrong time to go look for a flashlight if you need to go look for a little wave or something like that. This is called a tile file. There's really nothing special about it. I guess it's diamonds they put on here, but we use this to scrape and flatten out the edges. Hey, appreciate you watching. Do me a favor if you will, subscribe to the channel, either the YouTube or the Rumble channel, which this appears in. And if you can, check the notification bell or settings to make sure that you get notified when new videos are posted. Appreciate it. This is an example of a piece that was cut with this simple tile cutter, or some people may call it a scribe or whatever. It works like a glass cutter, and I'll show you a little video inset on that at some point in time. But we cut this using that device. You will need probably, when we get to the grouting stage and actually even the setting stage, we need some spacers, unless of course you have what we call lugged tiles. Now what a lugged tile is along the edge toward the back there'll be a little process, a little ridge in a couple of spaces, and what that does is it's below the grout line, so it won't show, but it allows you to lay one tile on another tile, and those little raised parts, those lugs, keep the tile separated and give you that natural gap, and that's easy to work with. Now the downside of that is you can't use smaller, you can't get it smaller than those lugs permit on your grout line if you want a real fine line grout. So that's that. Need a couple of squares. I use two different ones. This is speed square. This is one I usually use to go across the tile. You know, if we take it up here, if I want to mark my line, I use a speed square for that. And of course you'll need some kind of pencils or markers. We use a pencil on the wall when we get to the ledgering. Again, that's going to be a real good video. It's going to be long, but you'll see how to do it, and I think it'll be worth your time. Then I use a different type of square. I use this particular square because it's settable. See, I can take that right there and loosen that and get the exact spot along the bar that I want that to be, because this helps me find and mark my middles, right? Because I can put it on this side, mark a line, put it over here, mark the line. Is it in the same space? Are they getting further apart, or are they getting closer together? And then of course, take your pencil and make your mark, cross like that. Come up here, get it lined up carefully. All right, I got a little glue. I got a little glob of glue on this one. It's a virgin tile, but we come across like that because we'll need to mark some of these every other row on the center of the column where we do our layout. That's what we're going to do. We're going to draw a line on our tile. We might use nippers. Now these are an old set. Pat, I don't even know, Stanley, I don't even know what decade these were bought in, but these can be used to break. And you might say, do I need a tile saw? Well, it really depends on a lot of things, how many cuts you're going to have. And something like this, we don't have that many. But if you have a 4 or 5 inch angle grinder, which I already had this because when I put the masonry barbecue up, I used this to cut the bricks with. And the difference between, I don't know if this will show up well, if I get the light just right, these have like little teeth in it, okay? This is a dry blade, okay? And it's a little thicker. It's going to make a wider kerf, or the cut, whatever you want to call it. It's a kerf. But this will use when you use in conjunction with your eyewear, your safety wear. You can often hold that little tile down and just kind of clean up that little edge, or come into it if you have marked. If you've marked where your light switch or your electrical box is, you can come in here and cut in and cut in. And you can even use the scribe to mark your line to kind of make a pre-cut. And you can a lot of times just take a screwdriver and tap it, and it will break fairly cleanly, and just clean it up with a file. Now, the file is going to take you a little bit longer than if you have a saw, if you rent a wet saw, something like that. So that's, I think, everything. Might need, yes, for our layout, we'll need to take measure. That's everything on this side of the counter. Now, we have a bucket for cleaning up. I want to say this to you to be sure that you know the grout is going to have sand in it, right? It's going to have gritty, it's going to rock sand, that kind of stuff. We don't want that to get in our sinking thing, because it will settle out and it'll just get caught in your trap and make a mess. So use a bucket. It sounds silly, but use a bucket. You might even want to get a 5-gallon bucket to dump your water in, so that you can draw fresh water into your little bucket and then dump that into the other. sponge, obviously, when we get to cleaning and wiping off. And these are a bit of a godsend. It's not showing up good against my little blue shirt, but this little scratchy pad, this is a non-scratching Scotch-Brite, because we really scrub the grout before it sets up well. You want to let it set up well enough that it's kind of sticking in the groove, but you can rub it off and kind of really expose that nice little radius on the end of the tile like we have here. Now, I do like the smooth tile versus the wavy tile because it helps cleaning up is a little bit faster. The wavy tile looks cooler, no doubt. It's a little bit more expensive, but it's also, you're gonna have to do a little bit more effort in your cleanup. Now we have right here, this is a sealer, commercially available sealer, 30 bucks or so a quart. You don't use that much of it. You will need a professional, I know this looks like an old sock or rag or something like that, piece of t-shirt, but this is a professional sealer applicating cotton patch. Of course, some gloves. Now I chose on this, I don't know if we got a good picture of it, I chose to use pre-mixed grout, and there's a reason for that. Because otherwise you're going to need yet another bucket. You'll need a cleaning bucket and a rinse bucket, but you'll also need a bucket to mix your grout in a little at a time, and it takes time. That slows your job down. The bags are usually 20 bucks a bag, something like that. At least they were this last week or two. And this is about 65 bucks for this. This is pre-mixed, pre-colored and everything. You just dip right out of the grout bucket for that. And it's just easier, it saves you time. You pay a little bit of money for the convenience, but it does save you some time. And you don't, as your grout wants to set up in the old style, the bag kind, the pre-mix, you have to be concerned with, have you ever mixed grout before? Do you really get it the right consistency? Does it dry too hard, set up too hard? Are you throwing stuff out? Are you then having to go down there, stop the job, clean out your bucket, rinse it out real good outside on the hose, and then come back and make another batch? I find this works a little bit better. Now, this is a float. This is what they call a float. It's just a little, this one happens to be a soft one. If you were going to use, let me turn it sideways and get my finger pinch here. All right, get it center of the camera. See, watch that. See, it's pretty soft, so it complies well. If you were going to use like a wavy or fairly textured, you'd want a softer one versus a harder one that will scrape. And I'll do a little, it's all set. I can't show you that, can't show you it going into position, but I can show you, mimic the motions to get the grout in there, what I find works out pretty well. Grout bucket says use circular motion. I use a different technique. Over here we have numbers of these putty knives, whatever. We do need a metal one, a hard metal one. You don't want to put this on your wall to scratch your sheetrock or scratch your tile, but you will need it when it comes down to scraping your mortar, or in this case, the glue off of the trowel. Now with these, we have a number of different ones. This one in particular I use doing the underfill on the first row, because we're going to set, using the ledger method I use, we're going to set the second row, really start with a second row, build the wall up, and then along the edges we need something to do. And you need two, sounds silly, but you need two for that. These set of three were like $5, but you dip in your bucket, put it on the edge, try to keep it on the edge of your piece, and then you can cram that into up against like the cabinets, up against the ceiling. I do tape the ceiling down and against the cabinets and stuff to keep them clean, you know, so I don't have to do a lot of wiping off of the grout or the glue. Now the glue will come off pretty easily at a very smooth surface like a countertop or the outside of the tile or this type of stuff. Now that's pretty well much it. Oh yeah, probably gonna need some silicone at the end of the job to seal up the edge of your bullnose. So that's a quick review of this. I will put another little segment just briefly on this. This is called I call it a scribe. It's a tile cutter. We're going to cut to that scene and we'll wrap this particular episode up. Now behind me we have just a few more tools, and you've got some choices here you want to do it. I have a little laser level. This is Amazon. These things are pretty nice. This is a cheap one. It doesn't have the fluid fill, so it really dampens the wiggling, and a little bit of vibration will make it wiggle, and it works off of either something like a little tripod, or what I used was a spare lighting stand. You can use, and you can find, you can spend a lot of money on a special stand that works like the old lamp poles where you kind of spring load at top and get it in there, and then you had a little side gadget for your light. Well, in this case there's a side level for your laser level. You can use one of those, but I just use what I had. It's either that or you'll need a couple of levels. So that's about that. We're going to show you a little bit on this cutter, and we'll wrap this particular video up. All right, now let's demonstrate how to use one of these little cutters. Now this one's no good. It's old and it's junk, but you can buy new ones. I think this one is a 12-inch. We'll cut 12-inch ceramic tiles. You can get them for $120 that big, or a little smaller one may only be 40 bucks, 50 bucks, something like that. We'll show you how to do this. In the meantime, I'm going to put down here in this corner, right down in here, an overlay of cutting. You know, we're going to mark, we have marked it with our square, doing a cut and finishing up one on a 90 degree, making a 90 degree or a 45 degree angle. Now we can cut either one of these pieces here. All right. Now what's wrong with this is, you see I've pressed too hard and these are not straight. And if we take this to the middle, if I'm to the side, it's going to be cutting off angle. If I turn this way, it's going to cut off angle this way. But if you get a new one and you use it for one job, it ought to work. Now we're just going to take, I'm just going to make a pencil line just for the heck of it. We're not measuring anything, but I'm going to put it in here. And I've got this at an angle to the camera because there's a little ridge right in the middle, and this has a little foot. This right here, there's a little foot that breaks it. So we're just going to line that, use our eyeball, getting on top of it, line it up with that line, and then it's just a point of getting that little glass cutting wheel to make a scribe, and then we just push down and it breaks fairly clean. So if you have just for changing sizes, this works pretty well. And of course we already talked about using the angle grinder or something like that, or a file to straighten up some of the other messes that you have.